I visited Ivonne Baki at her office here in Washington, D.C. She's the current Ecuadorian ambassador to the United States. Baki is the daughter of Lebanese immigrants to Ecuador and lived in Lebanon during much of the country's civil war.
So good to see you.
Thank you so much for having us here.
So great to have you. So great to have you.
Madam Ambassador, I want to talk to you about diplomacy, about art, about your varied career. But I want to start, I was in Lebanon in 2011, working for another journalism organization, and I got into this conversation with this journalist there who had grown up in Lebanon. The Civil War happened. She talked about getting out of the country, how harrowing it was, that type of violence and how it impacted her as a young girl and how she wanted to come back and make a contribution there in Beirut. And I know you were touched by that same civil war. How do you think it's shaped who you are today?
Well, I always say that there are two things that changed my life: living the war in Lebanon, and when I was running for president of Ecuador, visiting the poorest area of Ecuador. So, in different ways, it shaped me. The war in Lebanon, it marks you because you believe the importance of peace. My children were born under the bombs. They didn't see anything of Lebanon, what it was. They didn't even know what it was, Lebanon, before. What it taught me, first, to live the moment, because you never know what's going to happen after 1 hour. I used to send my children to school. I didn't know if they're going to be coming back or not. Bombs were everywhere. I lost my parents because of the war. The house of my parents was in a place in the mountain. I remember the Jalde Triangle. When in 1981 and 82, the bombardment of 81 from the earth, from the land, from the ocean, from the sky, all the bombs came there. So they had to go into the basement. And all this contamination gave my mother, who was only 53 years old, galloping cancer in the mandible. And my father passed away from a tumor in the head after 1 year apart. So the things that happened because of war are something that you cannot explain in words. It marks you forever.
Baki is a career politician. She's also an artist and environmentalist, among many other things.
Ecuador has taken an amazing initiative.
In 2010, Baki became the chief negotiator to Ecuador's Yasuni Initiative, a plan to preserve the UNESCO biosphere reserve known as the Yasuni National Park, an area that spans just over 1 million hectares and is home to thousands of species, including flora and fauna that are still being discovered today.
We have a place in the Amazon of Ecuador that has the highest biodiversity ever. There is more variety of plants and trees than all United States and Canada together, just to give you an example of this unique place.
You're talking to a New York audience. You're trying to explain to them why this beautiful, pristine land in Ecuador is so important, but you put them in your shoes. It's that, and then what I love most about your TED Talk is the video plays, and you don't just jump in right afterwards. You let it kind of percolate, let the people think about it, and then you make the sell.
Yeah, it was, I am Yasuni, remember? That all of us are Yasuni, because it's a land that is unique in the world. It's the lungs to the world. Ecuador is not contaminating. It's giving oxygen to the world through the Amazon. And this place of the Amazon is the best place of the world because of the Amazon, because it was intact. It's a little higher than the rest of the Amazon because of being in the Andes Mountains. It's 10,000 square kilometers almost, and it's the highest biodiversity. Was never destroyed. When there was the icing time, Brazil's Amazon was frozen completely. All the rest of the Amazon was frozen except the Yasuni. And they say, why? It's because of that, because of this kind of different altitude. So all the flora and the fauna are intact. And the animals from the other rest of the Amazon, they came to the Yasuni. So it's a unique place. The word Yasuni in the Quechua language, it means sacred land. Protected by God. That's what it means.
You mentioned the war. It could have an impact on Ecuador, as you were mentioning to me. Yep. I mean, something as simple as flowers. We don't think of flowers or shrimp or bananas, and yet that relationship is an important one.
It's important, and not only because of the amount of money that we're selling, the generation of jobs. The roses, the roses in Ecuador, the majority of those that work in the roses are women. So if you give, for example, 10,000 jobs for that one, it's a whole family that is going to be. Direct, it's 1,000, but 1,000 or 10,000 people, but indirectly, it's the whole family. So it's affecting the whole society when you lack jobs. I mean, roses, bananas, shrimps, all these things that we sell to Russia, it stopped, and it's only one country.
You know, the Yasuni, this was a revolutionary proposal to preserve this land. And yet the fundraising efforts didn't seem to work. It was such a great message. Why do you think that is? Is it that fact that people feel it's distant, it's somewhere else?
I will not say, Mike, I will not say that it was. It created a lot of awareness. If there is awareness in Ecuador for the environment, it's because of the Yasuni. Even now, if you go and ask what is the best thing that we have done, it's Yasuni. There is a group of young people, Yasunizates, called Yasunidos. The Yasunidos, they created it after because they were against President Correa when he stopped it. And it was not because we couldn't get the money. We were getting there. But it takes time. I was there I was supposed to be there to take the 4 years to create, we created the fund to have the money. And we were getting the awareness of creating awareness. After 2 years, everybody was talking about the Yasuni. Even before the meetings of the COP21 in Paris, when they were talking mostly about it, in Paris, France, there is a group called Viva Yasuni that was created before the climate change issue was going so badly. And they were talking about that we have to stop the oil and we have to be renewable energy. So it was avant-garde maybe, so people are not understanding. In Europe they did. In the United States, the government was not supporting us, but the people were donating in the small amounts a lot. So the people were very much responding, especially the young generation. The same in UK, the same in Europe, all Europe. And we were getting the amounts, but we were not getting the thousands of millions that we needed.
The Yasuni Initiative was proposed by former Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa during the 2007 United Nations General Assembly. The plan was to ban oil extraction in this Amazon region by decree in an effort to cut emissions, but it needed the backing of developed countries. This project came to an end in 2013 due to a lack of financial support.
Ecuador is one of the smallest countries in South America. It's about the size of the U.S. state of Colorado, and yet, you know, you've already referred to some of this. A rainforest, the Andes, the Pacific Coast, the Galapagos Islands, these treasures. And we think about climate change and the impacts that undoubtedly it's bringing. And this is a precious country for you. Yeah. What are your fears? What are your concerns? And where do you see Ecuador in that battle to save our planet?
Well, in the battle to save the planet, I will say we are doing a great job to save, to give as much as we can. Ecuador is very much focused, especially with the President Lasso now, on the ecological transition. The Ministry of Environment, now it's named the Ministry of Transición Ecológica, ecological transition, because we believe very much that by 2050 we'll be completely carbon-free. So we believe in that, and 20% of our land is protected areas. The oceans are now, as I told you, in 1998 we made the first expansion of the marine reserve. Now another expansion that was done historically in Glasgow, when the president announced the second expansion of the Galapagos of 60,000 square kilometers more. Now we had before 138, so it's 200,000 almost square kilometers that are protected, and we had other countries join. So not only Ecuador is doing that, we have now Colombia, Costa Rica, and Panama entered into this marine reserve, and together it's 500,000 square kilometers. Now Mexico, the president of Mexico is calling my president also that they want to enter into that. The United States is helping us a lot. They are giving us, economically speaking, I mean, they're going to be supporting a lot into this.
You know, we talked a little bit about the environment. There was this legal battle years back between Chevron and Texaco following an oil spill in the Amazon. And I guess, you know, that's always going to be a risk. How has Ecuador, do you think, positioned themselves to deal with that in the future and to mitigate any type of spills?
That's one of the things that we have to be very careful of who comes in to do the extraction of the oil. And Maybe before it was different because there were not awareness of to do it in the right way. And that's why Chevron, it was Texaco before that, when this happened in Ecuador. There are still being spill of oils, they are still happening. In fact, in the spill of the oil in the Galapagos, we almost lost the island in 2001. So there are still those things happening, but I'm sure that now there are more awareness of how to do it. We're not seeing it yet, but for example, the Build Back Better World, B3W that I'm talking about, this is exactly that. To do things with the perspective of taking care of the environment, taking care of how you do things, not to take oil just to take oil, but what's happening with all the oil that is in the Amazon. Most of the oil is in the Amazon. So the water, how does it go? What happened with Texaco and Chevron? And at that time, it was because of that. Chevron was not. I mean, it was Texaco. Chevron bought Texaco afterward. But what happened is that the contamination of the water and the indigenous that live there, they got contaminated. So, yeah, this was very sad. It cannot happen again.
The decline in the world's rainforest, particularly in the Amazon, Congo Basin, and Indonesia, is responsible for an estimated third of global CO2 emissions. So an agreement by 134 leaders to halt and reverse forest loss by 2030, backed by $19.2 billion in funding, was seen as one of the most important results at COP26.
Is that one of the biggest problems we have, is that we can't put ourselves somewhere else and think about these treasures in the world and how we might lose them because we're not there?
Yeah, I think we have to. Yeah, I think that's the number one issue because we don't know how to. You know why? I think we're afraid. It's again fear. It's again the two feelings that you have, right. Fear or love. We're afraid to put ourselves there. We want to know what's going on. We are afraid of the unknown. What's going to happen if we do that? Maybe it's risky, so it's always fear. It's always not wanting to do more because of that.
How do we change that?
I'm telling you, this is what we have to. We have to teach better. We have to teach in a different way. What do we do always? When the child is born, there's no fear. Innocence. Sylvia Earle, I was doing a podcast for Sylvia Earle, the guru of the oceans. And she is in Galapagos, she was talking, and she said, she was with us when we were there for the signing ceremony. And she said, what you feel in Galapagos is the animals are fearless. They come to you, they play with you, they are not afraid. It's innocence, she said. That's what's missing, to keep the child inside. We take it out, we don't have the child, we're not authentic. We don't show, we don't tell I love you, we don't say things spontaneously. Everything is measured and we're afraid of talking, we're afraid of showing emotions.
Besides being among the most biodiverse areas on Earth, the million-hectare Yasuni Park is home to some of the world's last uncontacted indigenous populations.
The ecosystem's so important. I mean, we've outlined these treasures.
Yep.
What are your fears or concerns moving forward about making sure that it's protected? I mean, we talked about your TED Talk. Obviously, this is very close to your heart, the ecosystem. And I imagine, you said what keeps you up at night. I suspect even that must keep you up at night as well.
It used for a long time. For a long time, I decided not to talk about it. I think you're the only person that I'm having a conversation, a public conversation about that, because I decided not to talk about it. It affected me a lot. They say that everything starts small and it gets bigger, except pain starts big and gets smaller. Maybe it's less. I can talk about it, but the world is more aware now. What I'm happy is that they are talking so much about climate change. They are talking so much about moving towards renewable energy. This is the future. The problem is that you cannot do it just immediately. No, look at the problem that's happening now because of this war. Because they still need the gas, they still need the oil, they still need, because they haven't moved yet. And it takes time to move to something different. But we have to start. Oil prices, look how much they are now, the oil prices, because of, so the dependency on oil, it's still there. But we have to be aware that this is temporary and to take care of it as much as we can. We cannot do more than that. When they took the oil in the Yasuni, I understood why they were doing, because Ecuador is a country that needs money. When the oil prices were high, it was okay. When they went down, they needed to sell more because there was no more than money needed for it. So we have to get different way of income, sources of income. Ecuador still depends on the oil as the first source of income. And President Lasso is moving towards another way of getting investment in Ecuador in all the other fields, especially that we have now investment in renewable energy. So in tourism and things that generate jobs and our products that are unique because we have the best land and fertile land in the world. So all these kind of things, we have to still think more about that and less on how to move towards that. I believe it's going to happen. I believe that the 2030 aim that they have put, it's going to happen. People are more aware, especially the new generations, I'm telling you. Now, nobody wants, even my grandchildren educate me. They tell me, put off the light, don't put so much water, do this. So everything now you are buying, it has to be recycled. So it's organic food, things that are not using too much the artificial things that are coming from oil. So we are concerned about all this, but it's getting there.
Well, we're going to leave it there. Madam Ambassador, thank you so much. It's been wide-ranging. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.